What's up, everybody? It's Megan from Student Loan Planner. And today we're going to be going through the 5 new updates to the expanded PSLF program, or the temporary expanded PSLF waiver. You may also know it by. So a little bit of background on this PSLF waiver that's come about. This was an executive order that was announced back in October of 2021. And this expires October 31st, 2022, to be able to take advantage of this opportunity. So what this means, or in a nutshell, the PSLF waiver is allowing people who have been working full-time in public service historically to go back and count prior payments that otherwise would not have been eligible for PSLF because they were either made on the wrong repayment plan, or payments were made on the wrong types of loans, and or even outside like the payment window. So if the payment was late, or if the payment was too much or too little, that those could have also been technical details to why a payment in the past may not have counted towards public service loan forgiveness. And remember, the goal for that program is to get 120 monthly payments to get the loan forgiveness ultimately. So this waiver is a big deal for people who may have missed out on payments that could have qualified historically. Now is the chance to go back and get credit for those payments. So we know that we've done videos on this. We've talked about it in our podcast and in some blog content on our website. But there's some other newer updates that we haven't, well, we talked about as well, but we'll do a deeper dive into in this YouTube video. So if you have not already, like and subscribe this video. It helps us expand our reach to people who may not have heard about the PSLF waiver that could be eligible, or who may not have known about some of these nuances that we're going to talk about here next. So let's get into it. One of the first updates that we've seen is how the department is actually going to be counting these prior payments. So before the waiver, one of the major problems with the PSLF program was that it contracted these servicers to go back and count those prior payments. And that's still the case. The contractor that's still counting these payments is Fed Loan Servicing, but they had more specific rules. They were going back to look to see if the payment was the right amount or made on the right day, or if the payment was in, or if the plan was in repayment status at that time. So there were a lot of nuances to whether or not that payment was going to count. Now, what the PSLF waiver, or how the Department of Education is treating this waiver, how they're going to be looking back at prior payments, is instead of looking at the payment exactly, they're going to be looking back to see if a borrower was in repayment status as it was reported to federal student aid. So that's pretty big, because if we were in repayment status, that makes it a lot more straightforward to go back and count up all of the months that were in that repayment status and give us credit for each of those months, regardless of how much the payment was, what repayment plan we were on, or what loan we had. So that's a big deal. It makes it a lot more simple for them to go back and count up those payments, I think. Hopefully that means it's quicker to process, and we'll be getting some updates on those payment counts sooner. So that's good. So that's the first update. Now, the second is has to do with borrowers that have overlapping payment histories or different payment counts. So we've talked a lot about this on the podcast because this is a big deal. But the language was telling us that if someone had different payment counts for some of their loans. So where instances like this happen is if someone went to undergrad, let's say, borrowed loans, and then graduated, went to work, let's say, in a government position for a couple of years, made payments for a couple of years, but then went back to grad school, stopped making payments, borrowed more loans for graduate school, and then they entered a government position after graduation again. Now, thinking about how PSLF works, those older loans are going to have a larger payment count than the newer loans from graduate school, because those newer graduate school loans didn't exist to have payment counts for those specific loans towards PSLF. So their language was saying that as long as your payment history overlapped, meaning you entered repayment on all of the loans at some point, that if you consolidated those loans together, the whole consolidation loan would be rounded up to the loan that had the highest payment count towards PSLF. So if those undergrad loans had 50 payment counts towards PSLF, for example, but the graduate school loans only had 20 payments, then you could consolidate and the whole consolidation loan would be rounded up to that 50 payment count. So that was a huge deal, but we kept getting tripped up on the overlapping payment. What does that mean? How are they going to determine when we had an overlapping payment time frame? How technical are they going to be? And so thankfully, they continued to further clarify that, where the Department of Education has now said or clarified this to say that no matter what, if you consolidate and you loop loans into the consolidation that didn't have payment history or that had a lot of payment history, regardless, we're going to get credit for the loan that had the most credit towards PSLF. So we're not going to be left high and dry if our payment history didn't overlap, if that makes sense. So that's great. That solves that kind of question on if we should be getting very technical with that, but the answer is we should not. If you have a different payment count between loans, and I would say it needs to be a pretty big payment difference. So not a couple payments, because consolidation takes 30 to 45 days to do anyways. So if you're only a couple payments different from one loan to another, the consolidation is going to take 1 or 2 months anyways to finish. So we're right back at where we started. So, I mean, if there's a difference of like maybe 6 or more, I think that would be an appropriate time to maybe consider doing a consolidation to round our payment count up to the highest payment count that any one of those loans has. And this is only if you are going towards public service loan forgiveness. Because if we consolidate, keep in mind that does erase our longer term forgiveness credit. So it does not erase the PSLF payment history. It's very clearly laid out in the waiver language that it's not, but it will erase the income-driven forgiveness credit if we're going towards that longer-term maximum repayment period. So again, this would only be something to do if we know we're working towards PSLF. So that is the second update we've seen. That leads us into the third update. And this is where it gets a little complicated, but parent plus borrowers. Right off the bat, I'll say if you only have parent plus loans, you've never consolidated, but you're working in a public service capacity, this PSLF waiver is not relevant to you if you only have parent plus loans. Now, where you should pay attention is if you have parent plus loans and you've either already consolidated or you have one or a couple of your own loans as well. So maybe your own loans from your own education in years past, or more recently, if you went back to school, this is where you should probably pay attention, because the PSLF waiver could be relevant to you if you have a loan outstanding that was or could be eligible for this PSLF waiver. Consolidation, this can be tricky. So I highly, highly, highly recommend setting up a consultation with us if you fall in this bucket. You're a parent plus loan borrower, you have parent plus loans and some of your own loans, because there are some technical tricks we can take advantage of with this PSLF waiver to reduce your future payment with what we call the double consolidation. There's a blog post on our website about this process, and we've done a few podcast episodes on it too. And so taking advantage of the double consolidation to reduce your student loan payment down to as low as 10% of discretionary income versus 20%, which is traditionally what parent plus loans have access to. And there's a way that we can take advantage of this waiver if you had a loan that was maybe your own, or if you had an older parent plus loan that was already consolidated. So if you fall into that bucket, look into scheduling a consult with us, because I think there could be some PSLF payment credit on the table that we can take advantage of. That's probably about all I'm going to say about that one, just because it gets so technical where I don't want to confuse you. And it is very specific to any one person's situation. But quick story to maybe put some perspective into who might fall in this bucket. So we were working, I had worked with a teacher, and her son 2 years ago. They had borrowed some Parent Plus loans for his education from, I think it was like 2017 to 2021, or maybe 2016 to 2021, a 4-year degree. They financed it with Parent Plus loans. And the mom had a very old FFEL loan from early 2000s, where she went to get her master's degree for her schooling. And for her degree, she was working in a school system. She went and got her master's degree. So she had this old lingering loan that she didn't want us to touch when we did our consultation. So we didn't. We went ahead and did a double consolidation with the Parent Plus loans. And then we were planning on going towards public service loan forgiveness with those loans to get them forgiven 10 years from now, because she was planning on still working, and she knew that they could make 120 payments between now and before she was going to retire. So that was the plan. We were going to go towards PSLF with her Parent Plus loans. So we already did the double consolidation to make those payments lower for her in the future, or more so for him because he was paying. But this PSLF waiver came out, and they scheduled a consultation with me, a follow-up consultation. And reviewing the language of this waiver, there was kind of a light bulb moment where it looked as if we had consolidated that FFEL loan that mom had from a long time ago that previously wasn't eligible for PSLF. But if we had consolidated that loan with the Parent Plus loans, then the whole consolidation loan would then be eligible for the PSLF waiver, because that FFEL loan is what I would call an anchor, where it gave us credit for prior payments according to the PSLF waiver. And with the consolidation, combining them all together at that point, it would credit that whole balance, the highest payment count, towards PSLF. So we talked about it. We talked about how the risk was that it wasn't going to work, but worst case scenario, we'd still go towards PSLF as we had originally planned. And we went ahead and did the consolidation, submitted documentation for employment. And sure enough, she got her whole balance forgiven, because she had well over 120 payments on that FFEL loan. And that meant that the whole consolidation loan, with those older Parent Plus loans we already consolidated, the whole consolidation loan was forgiven. So this person had graduated not even a year or two ago with a lot of Parent Plus loans. And since mom kept that FFEL loan around, of course, not knowing that this would happen, but with us knowing how this language worked, or thinking we knew how it worked, it got their whole balance forgiven. So this is what I mean by how it gets very nuanced. And I think if you're in a situation where some of these facts kind of align, maybe we don't get immediate loan forgiveness, but maybe we're a lot closer than we originally thought. So this would be something to definitely schedule a consultation with us on. So that was a lot. But going on to number 4, fourth update for the PSLF waiver. So FedLoan is continuing to maintain, or I guess maintenance, these PSLF waiver applications, meaning they're collecting them, they're processing them. So the Department of Education has agreed to have FedLoan contract for another year until the end of 2022. So they're still going out the door. They're still leaving the business, but they're contracted to continue to process all of this PSLF waiver paperwork. And so if you're wondering why you haven't gotten moved to the new company who's called Mohila yet, this is why, because you've been tagged as pursuing PSLF. So you're still under FedLoan until they go ahead and move everybody who's working towards PSLF over to Mohila. So that's the fourth kind of new change, is FedLoan is sticking around for a little bit longer so they can process all of this waiver and PSLF paperwork. And then the last update, this one's pretty quick too, but the updated PSLF help tool. So apparently the Department of Education announced that they've updated the PSLF help tool they modified it to align with the conditions under this COVID-19 relief and under the PSLF waiver up until October 31st, 2022, when it expires. So I think this is kind of true. They haven't changed all the language, I'll tell you that, but you'll probably see a lot more information on the PSLF waiver with some links to go to, like their information page. But it's still not acting as if it's counting prior payments when you initially go through the PSLF help tool to to put in your employer information and to print out that employment certification form. So don't be shocked if it seems like it's still going off of the old rules. Some parts of it are, but rest assured, make sure you're just submitting that, getting all of your signatures from any past employer that's been since graduation or as far back as October 1st, 2007, since that's when the program started. Go back and get signatures from any employer that you worked at that was eligible while you were making payments and get those submitted, and they'll process to see where you fall on the payment count. So that will wrap up the 5 new updates that we've seen with the PSLF waiver. Hopefully this was helpful. Please like and subscribe if you have not already. We'll be posting a lot more videos or content around just how to take advantage of the things coming about right now. Great opportunity for you to get your ducks in a row for your planning. But thanks for hanging out with me on this video, and I will see you in the next one.